Hi everyone, I'm back. I know I've been gone forever, but I finally found time in my schedule to talk about the recent, and I say that with heavy air quotes considering it's been nearly 4 months, trailers of Pokémon Legends ZA. Of course, we had our usual Pokémon Presents in February, which gave us our first proper reveal of ZA's gameplay and graphics, with a follow-up trailer in the subsequent Nintendo Direct showcasing the ZA Royale. Finally, we then got the reveal of the game's key art in May, which ever so slightly makes some of the points I was going to make in this video seem a tad obvious or unnecessary now, but we'll get to that. Well, I've made a few amendments where necessary. I wrote and recorded most of this video when it was much more topical, but time is not on my side as I've been super busy with university work and more recently preparing for my 2 weeks in Tokyo studying Japanese, so please forgive me if this video isn't edited as well as it could have been and some points may seem slightly outdated. I did have a section talking about the mobile game announcements in the presents, but I've decided to scrap that as there's very little point to be talking about updates to games that for the most part have had these updates come and go, as a lot of them are limited time events. However, I do still want to touch on a few announcements from the presents that piqued my interest. Without further ado, let's get into it. There were 3 announcements in this presents that I thought were worth talking about, even if they're not the main focus. There's the new season of Pokémon Concierge, which I really must get around to watching. I'm really glad a project like that did well enough for a second season, especially at the rate that Netflix likes to cancel shows. It's such a lovely project and shows the diversity of the franchise. I'm very glad to see that it's coming back for a new run this year. Then we have the announcement of Pokémon Champions. Now this is a particularly interesting one. I've been hoping this game would happen for a very long time, not because I necessarily think it's a game I'm going to get much out of, but because this could give us a very interesting future for the series. Now we don't know if this is what's going to happen, this is entirely speculation, but I think that the Play Pokémon Championships are going to move to the Champions format so that the main series can continue to experiment with new battle styles like we've seen in ZA, which we'll touch on a lot more later. This could possibly be the future of Pokémon Championships, basically making a Pokémon Showdown but real type deal. It's even available on mobile devices, and I love that there's going to be cross-gimmick interactions, with us seeing both Terrastyle and Mega Evolution in the trailer. I do wonder how that will work though. Will it be that you get one Mega or Terrastyle or Z-Move or Dynamax, assuming that those two are in the game, or will you get one of each? Could definitely be an interesting one. It's also nice to see that Ilka's new The Pokémon Works division are going to be heading that one up, as well as developing Pokémon Sleep. It'll be interesting to see the results of that. Finally, there's the Latin American Spanish translation that is now going to be standard, starting with Pokémon Legends ZA and Pokémon Champions. This has been a discussion for a long time, with Scarlet and Violet being a massive part of it. It's great to see Pokémon expanding into more territories such as Latin America and giving them some proper localization, so great news on that front. Now then, on to the really big news. Finally, after a year of waiting, some information on Pokémon Legends ZA. We have gameplay footage, and lots of it too. It's been a very long time since the last news on ZA. In fact, it was exactly 1 year before this first trailer came out that we got the initial teaser. And I managed to make 2 videos out of that, and I've already been analysing the new map thoroughly, so expect a follow-up to my map video soon. But first, I want to talk about the game from its gameplay mechanics, to its story, to the new and returning characters, and the world design, and of course the art style and graphics. Starting with the gameplay. What an exciting trailer! The game appears to be building on Legends Arceus gameplay with free-throwing Pokeballs and choosing when to send your Pokemon into battle, but making it even more seamless as we clearly see a Vivillon swap out into an Onix without any sort of cutscene like in previous titles. Assuming that starting wild battles will work in the same way, it will be far more like sending a Pokemon for an auto battle in Scarlet and Violet than before with the long drawn out cutscenes. Before we go too deep into the battle system, I want to mention the rest of the gameplay first. It seems, unlike Legends Arceus, that this game is going for a very similar style to most core series games in terms of its story structure and gameplay. While a lot of elements have been retained from Arceus, it looks like the setup for a core series game as opposed to the more wild Pokemon focused approach that game took. Trainer battles are back in full force. So far there's no sign of noble Pokemon battles like in Arceus. In fact, I'd have to say that this game focuses far more on trainer battles than it ever did on wild battles, almost like an opposite to Arceus, which is something I predicted back when we had that first initial teaser, though I have no idea if I actually mentioned that in my YouTube video or not. The usual running around a city gameplay seems to be the same, with added elements of sitting for a coffee in a Pokepuff with your Pokemon and parkouring across roofs, using a similar mechanic to the Rotom phone saving you from a fall in Scarlet and Violet, now throwing the phone behind you to propel yourself forward, which would bloody terrify me in real life, like those things are not cheap, but hey, if it works, it works. It also seems the mission-based structure of Arceus may be gone, as, unlike my theory suggests, our base of operations seems to be Hotel Z rather than the Looker Bureau. Though we did get a good look inside the Bureau later on, but we'll come back to that. Unless we're going to be running errands for AZ and our rival, I think it's more likely we'll be having the usual Pokemon structure, but with a bit more story and maybe a few more trips to the hotel than we would have to our usual starting house. Now then, let's talk about those battles. Battles are, for the first time ever, taking a real-time approach, which I'm very excited for. The game is no longer turn-based, as it has been for nearly 30 years. Legends Arceus introduced the move speed system, which allowed for one side to take multiple turns before the other could retaliate, but now, ZA is taking a completely new approach. Gone is the button mashing and Pokemon just sitting idly around the courts. Now we have to move around the battlefield, guiding our Pokemon to try and avoid our opponent's attacks, and time our own attacks well as well. Not to mention the fact that Pokemon moves are now charge and take time to perform, like in Pokemon Masters, and also have different ranges, so you have to make sure you're in the right position. This is going to be a brilliantly action-packed game, I can just feel it now. Imagine a battle with Diantha or whoever takes over from her, with you both moving in a fast-paced action-packed battle, perfectly timing protects and attacks. It's going to be so much fun, I can just imagine it now. The examples we see show a battle with our rival where their starter and ours are trying to hit each other, but can miss even with a 100% accuracy move, as now accuracy doesn't appear to be tied to moves, but how well you can time your dodging and attacking. I wonder if Pokemon natures will play into this, such as a hasty Pokemon being quicker to dodge while a relaxed Pokemon is slower, but its own stats have their benefits as well. Of course, the base stats of a Pokemon will probably tie into this as well, as a Slacking may take longer than a Mega Beedrill to get out of the way of incoming attacks. It'll be great fun to see this in action. Now there is one other major gameplay element which we know about since last year, but we've got to see it in action this year, and that's the return of Mega Evolution. In the trailer, we've seen confirmations of many Mega Pokemon returning, such as Mega Charizard X and Y, Absol, Ampharos, Gardevoir, Lucario, Altaria, and Salamence. Interestingly, a lot of these are Mega Evolutions introduced in Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, such as Altaria and Sableye, which makes this their first appearance in Kalos. We didn't get the reveals of any new Mega Evolutions, though I'm pretty sure we got soft confirmation that Mega Meganium, which is a mouthful to say, is going to be a Grass Fairy type, as Chikorita now lends Disarming Voice, which it hasn't done in any other games. There have been a few changes to Mega since we last saw them in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, such as the entire way they work. While it wasn't explicitly said in the trailer, I noticed that now Mega Evolution works a lot more like Dynamax, in that it's a limited time rather than being until the end of battle. It's actually incredibly similar to how Pokémon Tournament does its energy system, which also causes some Pokemon to Mega Evolve. It seems to gather energy, then when used will count down time-wise, but while active will make your moves significantly stronger. This will make battles more dynamic and work to make Mega Evolution more balanced. We don't know yet if this means you can Mega Evolve more than once in a battle, or if that limitation will still be in place. I think that's mostly what I've got to talk about from a gameplay perspective. But if there's anything you guys missed from the initial Pokemon trailer, please let me know in the comments so I can take a look and see if there's anything more we can learn from that trailer alone. Of course, we actually now have a number of additional details about the game from the recent Nintendo Direct, specifically focusing around the teaser at the end of the Pokemon Day trailer, which we now know is the ZA Royale. This is a particularly interesting element of the new game, it has to be said. I think it's fair to say that this is our gym stand-in, and as I pointed out on Blue Sky, the ranking system will most likely be the replacement for the star system seen in Legends Arceus, where you'd rise through the ranks of the Galaxy Expedition team. I'm hoping it will be how wild Pokemon and trainers scale, like I was hoping for in Scarlet and Violet. One of the main things to bring up about the new trailer is that the day-night cycle has a lot more purpose in this game than it does in previous titles, due to the introduction of battle zones being only active at night. It does seem that wild zones are still active at night, as you can see a few of the green borders nearby during the night scenes, which means that we'll still likely see a difference in the Pokemon population between day and night, like how in Legends Arceus you could find Drifloon and Ghastly at night, but not during the day. The website for Pokemon Legends ZA is treating the ZA Royale as almost a survival-esque gameplay loop, with it recommending you spend your days catching Pokemon, training them, and buying items to help you prepare for the next night. This could imply that Pokemarts will be closed during the night, which would be a really cool new feature and a way to give a bit more challenge to the ZA Royale. Who knows, maybe that will even extend to Pokemon Centers, and the only way to get a free heal would be to sleep the night off, which would be missing out on that night's battles. Oh, and I should also mention that there's now not a separate counter for Pokemarts within Pokemon Centers. In one of the website's screenshots, you can faintly make out a Pokemon Center nurse behind the UI, and it also very clearly says Pokemon Center, not Pokemart. Of course, there are 26 ranks to rise through in this game, as opposed to the 10 you have in Legends Arceus. This has the potential to be very interesting, but before you can raise your rank, you have to take on a promotion match. Once you've won enough battles, you receive a Challenger's ticket, which allows you to go head-to-head with someone who's also trying to raise their rank. Fun fact for you, similar to the boss trainers in the Black Tower and White Tree Hollow in Black and White 2, these characters all have names that start with a letter that goes through the alphabet, but this time in line with your rank. For example, we see the first two trainers you have to fight as promotion matches in the trailer, and their names are Zach and Yvonne. I do wonder if, as you increase through the ranks, we'll start to see more carefully designed characters like gym leaders, or, and here's a fun one that just randomly jumped out at me, could we see those random Team Flare scientists as the last few? There's Aliana, Bryony, Celosia, and Mabel, so maybe we could get a tease by battling Mabel at the halfway point, and then as the 3 final promotion matches we take on the other 3. Whether they're still working for Team Flare or are free of all that, I don't know, but that's a discussion for another segment of this video, and one that we probably won't go into today because I have literally no information on that. There's also quite a few things that the trailer didn't tell us about the ZA Royale, but we did get from the website and the screenshots, such as the fact that the ZA Royale will include a feature that's similar to the BBQs from the Indigo Disc. As you can see, there are at least 3 concurring tasks that are very reminiscent of some of the Blueberry quests, but of course these ones exclusively focus on battles. They can be obtained from picking up bonus cards on the ground, rather than automatically like in the Indigo Disc. I assume that this will be like Distortions in Legends Arceus, in that they will be randomly placed each night. They reward you with ticket points, which is how you earn Challengers tickets, as well as prize medals, a sort of coin we don't really know the purpose of yet. Like a Goldengo, anyone? The ticket points could also be attained by winning battles, which based on my calculations, at one of the later ranks in the game, you get 1,400 per battle. At least at a certain ranking, you know. The fact that there is a level 37 Ampharos with Ampharosite implies that it's probably about midway through the game. This screenshot also gives us one other tiny confirmation, that being that you can Mega Evolve outside of battle. You can see the Mega icon at the bottom right, with the icon suggesting you just press down on the right trigger to activate it here. Why you would, other than because the Megas are all beautiful, is unknown to us yet, but I think that there may be a gameplay element that means we'll want some overworld Mega action. The UI in the screenshots we've got is very interesting. Firstly, we know what the minimap looks like, and I think it looks brilliant. This is the first time since Ultra Sun and Moon that we've had a proper minimap, and it looks to be as in-depth as maps like the ones seen in those games. We also know, thanks to the minimap, that you can fly, or whatever the fly equivalent is in this game, to the battle zones and wild zones. There's also one other element of this minimap that's particularly interesting. Similarly to Pokemon Legends Arceus, ZA will be operating on an in-game clock as opposed to using our real-world time to dictate the in-game time, as seen in games prior. However, for the first time, we've got a bit of a countdown. Around the outside of the map, you can see either a sun or moon icon, and a portion of the map outline will be filled either blue or red. It appears to be counting down to when the night-day switch happens, and that implies there's going to be a lot of focus put on that gameplay difference. There's also another UI detail I wanted to point out. It seems that, like in Legends Arceus, you can run away from battle, but this time you just press minus to do so. Or you can run away physically, like in Pokemon Legends Arceus. It seems to work even for trainer battles, weirdly. There's one final gameplay detail I want to mention. We now know how Mega Evolution charges. It's done through the use of moves. We see that when Lucario attacks Florges in the trailer, the Mega Gauge gets a boost. The game's story is still very much in the dark, but that doesn't mean that we don't have enough to start speculating. We were introduced to 5 characters, or 4 if you don't count the other rival. You've got Jet, the CEO of Quasartico Inc., and her secretary Vinny. Urbane and Tawny, who are your rivals depending on which gender you pick, which is very sad considering I'd much rather have Urbane as my rival. I know a lot of people would prefer Tawny. Would much rather we just got to choose. And you also have AZ. Yes, that AZ. It's been 3,000 years, man. Whatever you want to call him. We also got a good look at our player character, who looks a lot like Sycamore and the player's mum from X and Y. Suspiciously alike, in fact. However, there's seemingly no connection as you apparently just come to Lumio City on a sightseeing visit according to the trailer and website. And it would definitely muddle when this game takes place, especially now that we've had the box art reveal. Assuming it's been the same amount of time in the Pokemon world as it has in reality, the player would be at most 12, which they obviously aren't. If anything, I could see us being Sycamore's sibling, cousin, or something like that as opposed to his child. Let's take a good look at our player character first of all. A lot of people have mentioned that they look quite similar to Ethan and Lyra, the protagonists of Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver. While I'd love to see them back again, I highly doubt we'll be playing as them, as the trailer says you start your own journey as a Pokemon trainer in Lumiose, and they've already journeyed around Johto. And also the comparisons aren't as clear-cut as they were between Akari and Dawn and Ray and Lucas. However, it should be noticed that our player is wearing a black and green jacket to match Zygarde's colours, and also have red and blue coloured footwear and belts, which swap between each character. I'd also now like to point out that it's now been confirmed that the players' names are Paxton and Harmony, so they absolutely are not Ethan and Lyra, just to confirm. You're also wearing a Mega Ring, which is very similar to the ones we saw in Kalos, but instead of being black, they're now a beige colour. Also, like in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, there's a gap in the ring, making it more like a bracelet. Now let's take a look at our rivals, Urbane and Tawny. For the first time, we have a rival who is exactly the same character, but just swaps gender on us depending on our gender, which, you know, my thoughts on as a gay man, but you know, oh well. They've both got a great look about them. The blonde to pink hair gradient looks amazing, though I swear I've seen it on a character before, but I cannot for the life of me think who. They seem to have a great energy and design around them, and their personality really shines through in the artwork. Urbane is wearing a Pokeball themed t-shirt with a jacket over the top and a baggy tracksuit trousers underneath, whereas Tawny is wearing the same jacket but with a red crop top and shorts. Notably, in her official artwork, Tawny also has a Mega Ring, which isn't seen in the trailer. Urbane almost certainly also has one, but his is hidden on the hand behind his head. Interestingly, Tawny and Urbane have the same hairstyle as the default player characters, just in a different colour. This could be why they've gender-locked the rivals, but it does feel like an odd reason as they could have just given them different hairstyles, or just not worried about it. Also, hopefully this does mean that for character customization we're going to be able to have gradient hair like Urbane or Tawny. Maybe we'll even be able to get the same pink to blonde gradient as them. That would be good fun. Now let's talk about Jet, the CEO of Quasartico Inc. I think at this point we're pretty much all on the "oh look, a CEO, they must be the bad guy" trend because of characters like Luzamine and Chairman Rose. While I do think we're right on that with Jet, as her and her secretary Vinny do definitely give me that Rose and Oleana vibe from Sword and Shield, I would like to see Pokemon progressing away from this a bit more because it's getting a bit tired always doing twist villains ever since Sun and Moon. They even attempted it in Black and White and X and Y, but who knows if they ever will. I do really like Jet's design, but unfortunately we know so little about her or Vinny that there's not really much to talk about with either of them. But let's briefly mention Vinny as well. He reminds me a bit of Saguaro from Scarlet and Violet, given that he's got a very gruff exterior, but some cute hair accessories. I don't know if that would be important to his character, or if that's just a thing he does, but it's a nice touch. Aside from that, we again know very little, but it seems that with these two being introduced so early on, they'll have a big impact on our journey across Lumiose. Now the big one, AZ. Those of us who played X and Y will remember AZ as that tall bloke from 3,000 years ago who made the ultimate weapon, which is what Team Flare used in the climax of X and Y to try and wipe out life on Earth aside from them, or give themselves eternal life depending on... It's very confusing. The story of X and Y is not brilliantly written, it has to be said. Well now, AZ is a hotel owner and manager, and he's still with his partner Pokemon, Eternal Flower Floette. Yeah, you know, that Pokemon that's been in pretty much every Pokemon game for ages, but has never been made available. He looks a lot more content in his life, losing the constant frown for a warm smile, and he's even got some new clothes. He's definitely going to be playing an important role in our adventure, as he owns Hotel Z, which is the hotel that will act as our base in the game. Interestingly, in his official artwork, he's sat down in one of the chairs that we see in Hotel Z, which there appears to be a set of 5, implying that we'll have 5 friends like we did in X and Y, which will include AZ, us, and Urbane or Tawny. My prediction is that Emma will be one of the others, as later on in the trailer we see in the Looker Bureau, but I'll be coming back to that in a few minutes. More importantly, we have now actually seen Emma, and she's in the box art. Again, we'll come back to that. It's great to see AZ after all this time, and he's definitely going to be an important character in the story. We don't know what his connection to Zygarde is particularly, because his connection to Xerneas and Yveltal was through the creation of the ultimate weapon, and as far as we know, there was no involvement of Zygarde in that experiment. So it will be interesting to see why he's named the hotel Hotel Z, and what his connections are to Zygarde. While we're on the topic of characters, let's talk about some other characters that we might see again in NZA. We're now pretty sure on where we are timeline-wise, and can I just say, I was so right, but that does give me some ideas of who we may be seeing. If you watch my other 2 ZA videos, these won't come as any surprise, but let's start with Emma, who has now actually been confirmed for the game. Emma in Pokemon X and Y was a homeless child who lived on the streets of Lumio City. She was taken to this game to give her somewhere to live and work. She and her partner Pokemon Mimi, the Esper, became part of a trio with us and Looker in the post-game story. But it turns out that she was also working for Xerosic, and unbeknownst to her, stealing Pokemon under the guise of Essentia. Xerosic put her in a power suit and made her battle other trainers to steal their Pokemon for Team Flare, which was all done without Emma's knowledge. At the end of the story, she reconciles with both Looker and Xerosic, thanking them both for what they did for her. When Looker leaves Lumio City at the end of Pokemon X and Y, Emma is left to take on the Looker Bureau herself. And she also keeps the Essentia suit as part of that, and is now also wearing it in the box art for ZA, which is very, very interesting, and I wonder, how that's going to work, because obviously she does wear it after the end of the post-game in X and Y, when you do rematches with her, but in Pokemon Masters EX, as I just about to speak about, we do see her wearing her normal clothes and still battling as normal. In Pokemon Masters EX, she returned with her new partner Pokemon, a Crobat given to her by Xerosic. The reason she doesn't use Mimi is because Mimi is like a little sister to her, rather than her own Pokemon. She still works with the International Police, teaming up with Looker and Annabelle in the Carlos villain arc, but nothing more really comes of that, and it's been a while since we've seen her. But in good news, she did get one of the best battle themes in the game, based on her encounter theme from X and Y. Now, let's talk about how she might return, or will return, in ZA. As I've mentioned already, we get a good look inside the Looker Bureau in the trailer. I did a little bit of analysis in that shot, and from what you can tell now, that the picture of the desk is of an Esper, most likely Mimi, which has me very worried, but also very certain that Emma will be returning. We also know that there is a coat hanging at the back, and as a few people have suggested, it looks more like a woman's coat, which personally, I don't really see much of a difference. But hey, if that's what clinches it for you, then go ahead. For me, I was always pretty sure that if the Looker Bureau came back, it would be Emma running it, because that's how the story of X and Y is left off. Now on to the next one, Karina. I definitely talked about this in my map analysis from back in August. Last August? Oh my god, it's been nearly a year. But I'm pretty certain that if we're in a time period not too far off from X and Y, we're definitely seeing Karina again. In X and Y, she's the Mega Evolution successor, someone who will, in the future, take over from her grandfather Gherkin to become the Mega Evolution Guru. Well, given the return of Mega Evolution in ZA, a game set in the future of Carlos, how perfect of a character arc would it be to make her the Mega Evolution Guru and give us access to Mega Evolution in this game? On Passio in Pokemon Masters EX, she's already taken on more of these responsibilities, given that Gherkin isn't present in that game yet. I think it would be a great narrative moment to give her that character journey and give her the chance to return in ZA and fulfill her potential. Now onto our friends from Carlos and Alola, it's Dexio and Cena. These guys have to show up at some point, right? Not only are they pretty important characters in X and Y, they literally researched Zygarde and Mega Evolution in Sun and Moon and the Ultra games. There's no way that they don't have any relevance here. I mean, I'm pretty certain that we'll be hunting for Zygarde cells again, as we see one in the trailer, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if Dexio and Cena are the ones giving us the Zygarde cube once more to have a little hunt around and gather all the different cells and cores. I think it would be more odd if these two didn't show up at some point than if they did, especially as in my very first analysis of the new map artwork, I can very clearly see that I was right in thinking that the Sycamore Pokemon Lab is exactly where it was in X and Y. And whether they're running it or still just working for Professor Sycamore, I'd love to see them back again, and it would be really fun to have the masked duo return for a cameo as well. Speaking of Professor Sycamore, let's talk about him and the possibility that he might come back. As I mentioned a moment ago, the lab is still present on the map, and it's not too far away from Hotel Z. We don't know if Sycamore will be giving us our starters, as we seem to get them very early on, as the trailer shows them right outside the train station where we first arrive. But I think it'd be really nice to see Sycamore in some way. Perhaps he's here in a role similar to Professor Laventon in Legends Arceus, where he gives us our Pokédex and helps us to study Pokemon and Mega Evolution throughout the game. I don't know how big of a role he'd have, but seeing as the male protagonist looks so much like him, it would be odd if he didn't show up at all. My current working theory is that we're Sycamore's cousin or something, and he's the one who invites us to Lumio City, which would be nice, but I have no evidence to believe that whatsoever. Team Flare! I have no idea in what capacity, but I'm dead set that these guys will show up in some way in this game. We can rule out Zorotic returning, as given that he was arrested at the end of X and Y, and Lysander and the scientists' lives are still up in the air. But who I definitely think would have some relevance is going to be Mulver. We see very clearly in the trailer that there's an upgraded Holocaster, which tells me two things. One, someone is still working on Lysander's technology, and two, Mulver, who was a major news anchor using the Holocaster technology for broadcasts, is someone who'd have many interests in that technology continuing to be developed. Mulver is a lot of things in X and Y. She's a news anchor who tells us the goings-on in the story throughout the game, a member of Team Flare as revealed by the post-game, and a member of the Elite Four. She was woefully underutilised in X and Y, so I think it'd be very fitting for her to get more of a focus here in ZA. She definitely has the motivation and the means to keep working on Lysander Labs technology, and the idea that she could be running an underground Team Flare would be amazing. I hope that whatever happens, she's better utilised than what we saw of her in X and Y, if she appears at all. Finally, we've got Diantha. She's the champion of Kalos, and I think it's fair to say it would be odd for us not to see her in game. In Legends Arceus, Cynthia got two separate ancestors, so I don't think there's any way that Diantha doesn't have some presence in this game. It would make a lot of sense to have her be a prominent part of the story, or as the final battle in the promotion matches. We've already seen both Mega Lucario and Gardevoir as very prominent Mega Evolution returns, with them being the ones announced for the TCG, and now getting full ETBs, both of them. The reason I bring this up is that it lends to credence to the idea that Karina and Diantha will be returning. Diantha isn't too involved in the X and Y story, but she does have some relevance, as when we first meet her she's talking to Lysander, and we also know that she's working with Professor Sycamore on researching Mega Evolution. It'd be great to see her back, and maybe even in a more prominent role than in X and Y. Now, let's talk about the potential story in this game. While we don't have any official confirmation on what the story will be yet, we do know that it will involve Quasartico Inc., AZ, and Zygarde. Obviously, if I had to guess, I'd say that like in Legends Arceus, whereas your journey progresses Jubilife Village and becomes a lot more built up, the same will happen as you journey around Lumios, and the redevelopment plan will continue. I don't know if this would be active participation from you as the player, like the From the Ground Up quest in Breath of the Wild, or if it will be more like in Legends Arceus, where it just sort of happens around the player, but is said to be because of the progress you've helped us make. We still don't know how much Zygarde will play into the story and how it's going to happen in the actual game, and I couldn't even guess really. It's definitely a really interesting one, especially with the depiction of the ultimate weapon in the game's logo, which definitely implies that it will have some impact on the game. It could be that Zygarde can also be used to power the ultimate weapon, like Xerneas and Yveltal, and that will have some impact on the game. But I'm unsure of that, as at the end of the new trailer suggests that Zygarde will be an active participant in the story, appearing at the end on Hotel Z's roof, and we even see a Zygarde cell, which implies that we'll be collecting them again like in Sun and Moon. Interestingly, on the Pokemon Legends ZA website, they clearly advertise all three forms of Zygarde, despite the fact that we're yet to see 50% or complete form in the trailer. But this does soft confirm that they will be back, which shouldn't really surprise anyone, though this will be the first Kalos game to feature complete form Zygarde. And 10% form Zygarde actually as well. However, the story may not hinge on Zygarde. While most core games in the series do see the legendary play an active role in the story, there's no reason to assume that Zygarde will be story-bound. It might be that Zygarde has a completely separate story, and that Xerneas and Yveltal will still be the main focus in the main story, with the ultimate weapon, like how Dialga and Palkia have more of a focus in the main story of Legends Arceus. However, I do believe that Zygarde will have some importance in the main story. Like I mentioned before, we see it on the roof of Hotel Z, or on some roof nearby, based on the editing, it would appear to be Hotel Z. Not to mention that we also know from the website that it takes a special interest in our character, which implies to me that Zygarde and us may have a special connection like how the player in Arceus were in some way connected in Legends Arceus. It should be noted that Vinny, Jet's secretary, wears Zygarde colours, as does the player character's default appearance. That definitely could imply some level of importance to Quasartico Inc.'s story. Now, the importance of AZ and Floette. Of course, AZ is a big part of the Carlos storyline in X and Y, with the events basically all being his fault, as he built the ultimate weapon 3,000 years ago. Now in ZA he owns Hotel Z, which is already interesting. I get him owning a hotel can, in some way, make sense, because it gives him something to do with his immortal life, but why call it Hotel Z? That definitely implies he knows more about Zygarde than he let on in X and Y. It might be that there is some connection to his Floette, as we still know very little about the Eternal Flower. In X and Y, AZ is not an active part of the story, just showing it once or twice to drop hints about what happened before being captured by Team Flare. In this game, we can tell that he's going to be far more present, with him being the owner of the hotel that we're staying at throughout the game. Like I mentioned before, with the ultimate weapon in the game's logo, I would not be at all surprised if we explore more about what the ultimate weapon is, and his regret for making it later on. Right, let's amend some of the things that I've talked about, like I did in the previous section, with what happened in the Nintendo Direct in March. While at first it may seem like the Nintendo Direct trailer focused more on gameplay than story, there's still a lot we can gain from this trailer in regards to the story, although there's little in the way of characters in this one, aside from confirming that the rival will be competing in the ZA Royale as well. What we can gather from the story here is that the game's name seems to, at least in part, come from this tournament. Of course, this is hardly something new. In Pokémon Masters, you're competing in the Pokémon Masters League, for example. Of course, the name also references Zygarde, and most likely something else, but I don't know what yet. I think it's a really nice way to tie in the lettering theme that was used in X and Y, and now ZA, to make it a bit more of a proper thing, if you know what I mean. My biggest hope is that this isn't the main story of the game, like Sword and Shield. I'm pretty sure that it will be a bit more like in Scarlet and Violet, where the ZA Royale will have a little bit of a story of its own, but will focus entirely on gameplay, but other parts of the game, most like the parts of Quasartico Inc., will focus on the opposite. We also know from the website that the only trainers who have recognised skill can be part of the ZA Royale. This is reminiscent of how in Sword and Shield you need to get an endorsement before you were eligible to take on the gym challenge. Who endorses us and why will definitely play into the early game. My bet is that it'll either be Professor Sycamore, if he's in the game, or Jet. If it is Jet, then you have to wonder why, especially since at the beginning of the game you're hardly going to be that good no matter the actual player's skill. Especially considering that this is a completely new battle style for the series. And now to make some more amendments based on the box art reveal, which you'd think would have so little information that I could not write 4 paragraphs on it, but yet, here we are. So, we've now had the box art for the game revealed, and right there, front and centre, is a character I've been going on about since the game's initial reveal, Emma. Interestingly, she seems to be using a Mega Lucario, which is completely new for her. In Pokémon Masters, as I said earlier, she's paired with Xerotic's Crobat. Now, if Lucario is going to be Emma's Pokemon of choice, that does sort of knock the theory that Karina's going to return, as it would be a tad odd to have 2 major players in the game using Mega Lucario as their signature Pokemon. And it would also still work with the fact that Lucario and Gardevoir have been the main focus Mega Evolutions for the marketing recently. And even if Karina's not back, if Emma's using one, that would make sense. However, I'm still not entirely certain that Emma's going to be using Lucario throughout the whole game. Bear in mind that we still haven't had any new Mega Evolutions revealed, so I'm betting that Emma will be the one using one of them as her main Pokemon. But to avoid spoiling it on the cover art, they use Mega Lucario as Lucario will get the sales in. There is also one other note to make. In the extended version of the art, Jet and Vinny are stood rather ominously over what appears to be the Trainer PR studio building. Now this could easily be a fake out in some way, but the comparison to Rose and Oleana is very clearly there, and well, I think you can see why I think they might just not be on the good side. But you know. Anyway, with all that being said, I'd like to now give some closing thoughts and conclude this video. Pokémon Legends ZA has a lot of promise. There are things we've seen that disappoint me, such as the graphical appearance of the Pokémon having removed the text string from Legends Arceus and Scarlet and Violet, and the teleporting at buildings, but other than that, I am really ready for this next game. I find myself increasingly excited by the possibilities. I'm really looking forward to finding out more about the story and getting to grips with a brand new battle system. I had a lot of nerves with the game being set entirely within Lumiose when we got that first trailer last year, as is very clear by my map video talking so much about the biodiversity of Pokémon. But now that I've seen it more, I'm far more on board with it. I'm conscious that I want to see a bit more about the game's story and something new from the design perspective. The focus of all the trailers so far has been on the gameplay, and I really want to see at least one new Mega Evolution, just to confirm we're getting new ones, not just the old favourites. And I know that there are leaks that have talked about them, but I honestly don't want to know, and if I find you posting the leaks in my comments section, I'm going to be very, very sad, because I don't want to know. I want to have a leak-free experience for the first time in ages, because I can never help myself. But this year I'm going to be good. I'm going to be good. Anyway, I'd also like there to be a handful of new Pokemon in the game, a bit like Legends Arceus. By the time this game comes out, it will have been nearly 2 years since the last Pokemon was revealed and released in Petulant, and I'm hoping to have something more to sink my teeth into from that department. I think at this point they've said all they can say with the gameplay loop, unless there's more they're hiding. And if we're getting trailers at the rate that we have been, which obviously we haven't, we're now 4 months from a trailer, and the next one is in... God, is it less than 2 weeks now? I think it's less than 2 weeks now. So we've got a new trailer soon, but there's still quite a lot left to reveal, and you know, there's clearly things that are going to be more substantial than others. I think my main worry is that I will get bored of the monotonous environments. So far, all of the buildings in Lumiose look the same besides different roof colours. I hope for at least some environmental variety to keep the game feeling fresh throughout. I have one last hope, in that I want to see some more returning characters, show us Diantha, Sycamore, etc. But aside from all of that, that's all I have to say. For now. I'm of course dissecting the new map art, and well, it's safe to say I was pretty accurate with my previous video. Will I be able to get that video out before the game launches in October? Who knows? I'd like to think so, but I'm in Tokyo for 3 weeks after this video comes out, and we have a whole new Pokemon Presents to enjoy while I'm there, so the map may just have to be forgotten about for now. I hope you've enjoyed this little deep dive, and that I'll see you around here for more soon. But until then, au revoir!